Well, in a moment, I'll be talking to the Channel 4 commissioning editor, Kevin Sutcliffe, responsible for this programme. But first, Abu Usama, who featured in the Dispatches documentary, joins us from Birmingham. This is about whether your views have been misrepresented. So which of these views, that women are deficient, that non-Muslims are pathological liars and terrorists, and that homosexuals are dogs who should be murdered, do you not believe?
Each and every one of those statements that you just made, they came out of my mouth, but they were misconstrued and they were taken out of their context.
So you don't believe that women are deficient?
No, I explained the meaning of that to the audience, and again, it was taken out of context, and it seems, again, to be an attempt on the part of the people who put the Dispatches program together to undermine the community cohesion that we're working towards.
And you don't believe that non-Muslims are liars, pathological liars, they are terrorists themselves?
Again, it was taken out of context, and it was explained.
What was the context you meant?
The security forces in this country, more than anyone else, are trying to eradicate all strands and forms of extremism. Believe me, had those statements been made by me without the proper context, I wouldn't be sitting here today having this interview with you.
In what context could you explain that Osama bin Laden is better than 1,000 Tony Blairs?
From what I've heard, from what they put forth so far, there was a hypothetical question, a scenario that I put forward as it relates to homosexuals being dirty, filthy people who should be murdered.
But you do believe that, don't you?
No. If you give me a minute, you'll understand and you'll hear clearly what I believe. It was a hypothetical question in which we were addressing the issue of freedom of speech. And I was putting forth to the audience this particular question to say, if I were to say that, hypothetically, would I be considered that a person who's practicing his civil liberties and enjoying his freedom of speech? I went on to say in the program, no, of course not. That statement is not acceptable, just as it is not acceptable for people to claim freedom of speech and to disrespect the Prophet of Islam. That was the context of the statement.
So in what context is Osama bin Laden better than George Bush and Tony Blair because he's a Muslim?
As it relates to the statement of bin Laden being better than Tony Blair and George Bush, I don't recall that being one of the statements that were made.
Well, I've got the transcript of the programme here in front of me, and it does appear to be what you said. He's better than 1,000,000 George Bushes, Osama bin Laden. He's better than 1,000 Tony Blairs because he's a Muslim.
As I mentioned, I stand behind the findings of the security forces of this country, who, again, I applaud and commend for their unbiased approach to get into the bottom of what the program tried to do.
But they haven't found that anything you specifically said was misrepresented. They haven't given us any details of what they think was misrepresented, so you can't claim that they were speaking on your behalf.
The fact that if it is true that they haven't given you anything, then that doesn't necessitate that they didn't find anything. If they didn't find anything, they wouldn't be lodging their complaint to the people at Ofcom. And personally, even though I do applaud the services, the security force, at the same time I do feel that they should indict the people at Channel 4 and the people who put forward this Dispatches program.
What for?
For, as it has already been mentioned and established and proven, that they are trying to undermine the cohesion of the community, and they should be indicted for that.
So you don't think it's undermining the cohesion of the community to talk about kafirs or non-believers, or to say the fire of the Muslim and the non-Muslim, they cannot coexist, one of them is going to impact the other? You don't think that undermines community cohesion?
No, I don't think that undermines community cohesion when taken in light of the context in which it was said. Of course not.
And what was the context of that particular comment?
The context of that comment was how the Muslims have a moral and ethical obligation to be extremely careful about buying into what we consider to be pop culture in this country that is totally and diametrically opposed to our moral system, like drinking, homosexuality, things of this nature. It had nothing to do with inciting or encouraging people to go out to harm anyone. It had everything to do with Muslims holding on to their religion and being proud about being Muslims and not being apologetic about that.
Abu Usama, thanks very much for joining us. Well, with me now is Kevin Sutcliffe, who was listening to that interview as well. Now, the letter from the police to the regulator Ofcom specifically says that you have been cutting sections of sentences so as appear to create new ones. Did you chop up what they said?
Certainly not. And I'm still baffled at the end of the day, a very busy day for us, as to actually what the complaint is about. I mean, there's no detail being put forward. This was dropped on our laps this morning. Surprising because we have been in a dialogue with the police over this film. It's a very important film for us. It was a big film and it had very important things to say. For the last few months, we've been talking to the police about very specific elements of that film. The 56 hours that is mentioned in terms of tape relates to 3 individuals who were looked at by the police.
Was he one of them?
He was one of them, yes. Right. Abu Hassan was looked at as well. And they've obviously come to a conclusion about the criminal nature of their inquiry. Surprisingly for us, they then announced this morning, simultaneously to us and the press, this idea that we somehow have been unfair.
Well, it's about how you edited it, isn't it? What they're saying is you've taken one statement from somewhere here, another one from somewhere here, you haven't given the context, and you've misrepresented him as an extremist when he's not.
But anybody who saw this film sees that the material absolutely speaks for itself.
He's denied it all just now.
You've been playing clips from it. It speaks for itself, absolutely. There is no underhand editing, moving things around. Abu Osama clearly has an issue about homosexuality. There are 4, 5, 6 bits of sync there in the film.
Sync being clips of
Abu Osama, talking clearly about what his attitudes really are towards homosexuality. There can be no doubt about it. There is no doubt about the context.
But why is it so heavily edited? I mean,
the film is a 9-month investigation. It goes to many mosques, bookshops. It buys DVDs, and it distills fairly and accurately from that down to the hour what their story is. And the story for us was that what was going on in mosques in Britain, you would be shocked by some of the things that are taught and are said. Each of those pieces of clip are used carefully and in their proper context.
But you're the commissioner, not the programme maker. Yeah. Can you be absolutely sure that every edit in this programme is fair?
The whole process is kept under close scrutiny all the way along the line. This particular programme, I and my head of legal and compliance took a close interest in. We had outside help as well. This has been a film crawled over for its accuracy because of the sensitive nature of it. We didn't go into this investigation, like we don't go into many of our investigations, not knowing how serious an undertaking they are.
Well, presumably you'll sue then. You're going to sue the police?
I've no idea yet, because I'd still like to know from the police actually what we're supposed to have done.
But they've absolutely attacked your integrity, haven't they? I mean, that is clearly a matter of legal action if you deny it.
Well, I will take advice from my legal department, but at the moment I'm still baffled as to what dispatches, and this film in particular, has supposed to have done wrong. Nobody's come up with any detail whatsoever. We've had a day of a story running, trying to link it to TV fakery and trust. This is a different issue. This is this programme being attacked for taking a brave, investigative stance into something that's so important and key in British life.
Kevin Sutcliffe, thanks very much indeed for joining us. And we did ask West Midlands Police and the Crown Prosecution Service and the lawyer in particular who made the accusation for an interview, but they all declined to appear.